Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream. Since it's a full moon almost, what better than to look at the moon and share some fun facts? So let's get the observatory opened up and ready to go. How's everyone doing tonight? Right, let's see. Connect to some equipment. Hey, Ron S. Good to hear you're doing well. Get the camera cooling down, even though it's probably not necessary for what we're going to be doing. While that's booting in, let's get Stellarium up and running. And we'll see how many bugs we get to work out tonight as well. If all goes well, it should point to the moon, but typically Stellarium doesn't like to interface with my mount. I haven't figured that out why. I have it narrowed down to making sure to adjust the time each time I load up Stellarium. If anyone has any ideas about that, let me know. And being that we're not seeing anything here, it's slightly concerning. And it's pretty hard to miss. Now, my all sky camera is not working, of course, so I'm pretty sure it's still clear outside. Um, Unless some clouds decided to just randomly move in. Let's see if this didn't connect. this doesn't cooperate, we'll get the coordinates punched into Sequence Generator Pro and go from there. Because we should have, well, we have some stars, so the mount is not cooperating, which is a shame. Let's bump this up a little bit. Go back to Stellarium. Now, one thing I noticed when I booted into Stellarium here is it's still very daylight on Stellarium. It should have switched over. And it also seems to think that it's going on 7 o'clock. See if we can get that to update. And we'll try this again. I don't want Sharp Cap, I want Stellarium. See, like I said, for some reason, Stellarium does not, it's not keeping my settings, and it's not keeping the correct time either. There we go. That's closer to the right time. So we'll reconnect to this. Hopefully the scope doesn't get lost. All right, so that's where the moon used to be 3 hours ago. And that's where the moon is currently. But it's still not wanting to slew to it. So we're going to start the whole process over again. So we'll have to change it to working out bugs instead of viewing the moon. So let's go down to our Gemini controller here. We're going to tell it to go home. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of arguing with it. So there is a very overexposed view of the moon. So let's turn down the shutter speed, and then let's get focused in on it. It actually looks like we're fairly in focus. Turn down the exposure a little bit. Not quite that much though. The computer I have in the observatory isn't all that powerful for running Stellarium and capturing exposures at the same time, so it's not very responsive. Typically when I'm set up for imaging, it's only running all the control software and not a planetarium software in the background. So each exposure you can see is just under 1 millisecond each. And the moon currently is about 95% illuminated. Let's see if we can get it a little bit clearer, although it's fairly in focus. The nice thing about the observatory is it does stay nearly ambient even during the day, so there's not really any cool down period necessary. There's plenty of ventilation to keep the optics near ambient temperature. So that should make it, yep, out of focus. And we'll go the other way to see if we can get it a little bit better. It's a good way to cheat, doing a coarse focus whenever you're doing super short exposures to see which way you need to go with your fine focus. So it looks like we do need to go out a few steps. So we'll just bring this out a little bit. And that should about do it for now. The one thing we'll have to keep an eye on is the temperature here. About every degree or two, we will have to adjust the focus. Now, being that we're just doing a live stream of the moon, probably isn't critical, but whenever you are doing astrophotography, you do want to keep adjusting the focus throughout the night because slight temperature changes will greatly affect your image quality. So the termination line here doesn't really have anything too exciting to look at. It's just past some of these large craters here. So if we do zoom in, there's not going to be much more detail to gain from it. It's really great when the termination line is more down this way. And every night, if you keep checking it, you can see more and more detail over on those craters. It's always great to view a partial moon right on the termination line. And it's great how many features you can see that are hiding in the shadows one night, but come out clear the next night. I need to figure out how to do trivia in the chat to see who knows what about the moon. Because because each of these regions all have a different name, as well as some of the larger craters are named as well. Now, if you want to get very detailed, a lot of the smaller craters also have names. This one here, what would it be? You have Tycho crater, you have the Stevenius crater, and then the Langiris crater is going to be over here, I believe. Let's see if we can zoom in on this termination line a little bit and see any detail in this region up here. Now, right now we're using a 102 millimeter scope, a 4-inch scope with a 0.74 reducer. So it's not going to be a super clear image once we start zooming in. We are cropped in at 200% of the camera sensor. So you'll start noticing it will start getting grainy. Typically you'd want something with a longer focal length to really get in up close on the moon. So you can see the termination line is just past this crater here. So you can get some really good detail showing how deep this crater in particular is, where it's the edge is built up, blocking the sunlight. And you can see just on the back side of the edge, which would actually be the far side, is illuminated. Now, a lot of people think that there is a light side of the moon and a dark side of the moon. Technically, that's not true. It's the near side, which always faces us. The Earth's moon's rotation, a day is, I believe, 29.5 Earth days. So one face of the moon always faces us because it is rotating at the exact same rotational period as a day on Earth. So the back side of the moon would be the far side of the moon. A lot of people call it the dark side, but it's not the dark side. It's actually the far side. So let's try to go in a little bit more, but it probably will end up being a little too grainy. And you can see now it's starting to get pretty pixelated. Now, if you were looking at this with an eyepiece right now, through this telescope, you would definitely want to have a filter over it because it wouldn't be damaging. Where did the Transformers land? They landed on the far side. They're hiding from us. It wouldn't be blindingly bright, but it would definitely ruin your night vision for a while if you were to try to look at other objects. Plus, you lose a lot of contrast because it is just so bright. Another fun fact about the moon is it's not perfectly round. It's actually egg-shaped. Just slightly, though. So if you imagine if you got an egg and laid it on its side, the wider bottom part of the egg is the side that actually faces Earth. It looks perfectly round in the sky because it's so far away. The other thing is a lot of people think the moon is like a light gray or a white. The moon is actually a very dark gray, similar to this region here. But due to its reflectivity, the sunlight makes it appear bright white. Now, when the moon's rising up on from the horizon or setting, sometimes it'll look yellow, gold, red. That's all due to pollution, essentially, in our atmosphere. A lot of dust in the atmosphere only allows those longer wavelengths of light to pass through. Similar to on Mars, sunrises and sunsets are not gold like they are here on Earth. They're blue. All the red dust filters out those longer wavelengths and allows the blue light to come through. So a lot of their sunsets on Mars, at least that the rovers and such see. They are blue. Looking through, you can see some of these craters. You can see shadowing coming through on some of these. I'm going to back out a little bit because it is very pixelated. Now, you should never look at the sun directly or indirectly without any proper safety equipment. But if you do ever have the chance to look at the sun through a telescope with the proper filters or solar eclipse glasses, you may notice that it looks to be the same size as the moon. Well, that happens to be that the moon is proportionally sized to the distance that it is away from the sun, that they are exactly the same size in the sky. Now, the moon's orbit is not perfectly round. It is more oval shaped. So that's why whenever we have eclipses of the sun, sometimes it is a total eclipse where the moon is covering the full disk of the sun. And other times you'll get an eclipse, the annular eclipse, where you'll just have the ring, sometimes called the ring of fire, where the moon, being that it is further away from Earth, isn't able to perfectly block the total disk of the sun, so you get that ring around it. When it does block the total disk is when you can see the sun's outer atmosphere, the corona, which is the purest white I have ever seen, and it extends massively far from the photosphere of the sun. You know, I'm looking here still for a Transformers logo, and I'm not seeing it. I'm really thinking that it might be on the backside. Something else you may not know about the moon is everyone's once favorite planet, Pluto, is actually smaller than our own moon. Pluto is an interesting character on its own. Speaking of orbital paths, its path is so chaotic, you could say, that when Pluto was a planet and classified as a planet, its orbital path didn't always place it as the last planet in our solar system. Most astronomers despise the moon for the most part. The moon and we have a love-hate relationship. It does make it difficult to do much of any ground-based astronomy, at least visual astronomy, that is, when it is full and high in the sky. The moon, other than the sun, is the most offensive light polluter, second to humans. If we were to try to do any deep sky imaging or viewing, the contrast would be severely washed out due to the moon. There are ways to get around that. If you're imaging something where you have the capability, like an emission nebula, where you can use narrowband filters, as long as you're imaging with the hydrogen alpha or sodium filters, that will still permit you to image or view, if you're doing electronically assisted astronomy, with just like if the moon wasn't there. However, the oxygen filter will be affected by the moon. And then for the other, the red, green, blue luminous channels, that is something you wouldn't want to work on while the moon's up. They're sneaky. So earlier, I was messing around with some of my software. It was still daylight. I think it was maybe 6 in the afternoon. Let me see if I can find that photo. And I was actually messing around with this software here, SharpCap. Routinely, I don't use it all that often. I'll use it once in a while, typically for putting on live streams, or if I just want to do just a quick, I'm going to do a quick see what the moon's doing. If it's something interesting that I actually want to capture, I'll use a different program. But I was messing around with the settings, and I look up, and I see an airplane, a jet, go right across the disk of the moon. And I went as fast as I could to capture it, but all I got was the contrails. I think it might be this one. Yeah. Still a pretty neat picture, I think, but missed it by miles is what I named it before when I pulled it off this computer. So close, but missed by miles. This is something on my bucket list, a photo to get. One, a airplane or jet transiting the moon, as well as the International Space Station transiting not only the moon, but the sun. Those two are going to be much more difficult to do. However, there are websites that will predict within a margin of error where the ISS will and when it'll transit. I've been keeping an eye on my location, and I've had a lot of near misses, which would mean the ISS is going to be, over here or on this side, but no direct crossings of it yet. Something that I hope to get eventually. Probably will be easier than trying to capture a plane transiting in front. But still like this photo. It's in black and white. I had my settings all messed up. It's a TIFF. Now you notice it's black and white, and if I zoom in, you're going to see a lot of checkerboarding. So that checkered boarding is not the actual pixels. That is from the camera that I'm using. Camera I'm using is a one-shot color camera. So it's a color camera similar to a, on your phone, DSLR, stuff like that. There is a grid in front of the sensor that's basically little filters, and they're lined up in a special pattern, typically 2 green and a red and a blue. So all sensors image in black and white. It's that filter that allows the color to be processed. So all these little squares are all the filters that you see because it hasn't been debayered. I am going to work on trying to debayer this file. Typically, the format that comes off of dedicated astronomy cameras are called FITS files, which are easily debayered. But even if I can get rid of the Bayer pattern, it's still a decent photo. Definitely going to be a hard one to capture without any blurriness to it. Because I think the last time I checked, there was just different regions trying to see like the ISS. It's just a couple seconds that it takes to travel across. I'm not sure if anybody here has seen the ISS pass through the night sky. It's very easy to notice. You'll see something in the sky that's moving, not blinking, in a perfect straight line that will, as it gets higher up in the sky, it'll brighten up, and as it sets, it'll start to get dim again. That's if it's very bright. Bright is, I'd probably say Jupiter or Saturn. That relative magnitude, it's probably the ISS. Some of the dimmer ones that you see that are moving in a perfect straight line could be any number of satellites. If you see a series of them, all same direction, almost like a cluster of them, more than likely that's going to be the Starlink satellites. I think the highest number I've seen in a row, I think it was 33 in just a matter of 20 minutes. If you catch them shortly after launch, you can see them all exactly in a line. It used to be in the astronomy group that I belong to, they'd call it the star train, because it looked like just 30 little dots, just all like moving along like a railroad, set of railroad cars. Yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of people try to get pictures of them, not knowing what they are, there and think that it's like a slow meteorite or shooting star, and they always seem to be disappointed when it's not what they think it is. And then the opposite is true. I've seen a lot of people send in photos online that are long exposures, and there's the airplane trail. And every time it blinks, you get that bright spot, and they think they have caught the Starlink satellites, but really they just caught an airplane. And then they get disappointed. It never seems to be that when somebody's trying to figure out what they took a picture of, that you can excite them by saying that's exactly what you took a picture of. It always seems to be the flip-flop of what they were trying for. So the moon, of all the known moons in our solar system, the moon is the fifth largest. Um, Now that's not saying that there won't be more moons discovered, because Jupiter, for one, and Saturn, but Jupiter is the most. It seems like recently it's been getting more and more moons every year. The four Galilean moons, they're the ones that get all the attention, though. The Galilean moons of Jupiter, they are interesting because you can watch them throughout the night orbit Jupiter. Jupiter is unique on its own because of its rotational period. You can actually, throughout an observing night, watch the Great Red Spot rotate in or out of view. You can also watch the moons fairly often transit Jupiter and watch the shadow that's being cast on Jupiter's cloud surface. If you have a large enough telescope, you can actually watch the shadow of the moon transit across. Now, if you notice the moon is jumping around, you'll see every frame it'll be a little bit wider, a little bit, sharper, a little bit blurrier, and you'll see it bounce like it just moved left and right a little bit right there. That's due to the atmosphere. So tonight it's actually, for as much as it's bouncing around, it's pretty calm. I have yet to have perfect seeing where there's no atmospheric dispersion or any turbulence in the air. But it's actually a pretty calm day. Curious, let me see what Mars's altitude is. See if we can take a look at Mars. It's up by Zenith, so we'll get everybody in the stream excited right before the disappointment of looking at Mars here. Now, beyond the fact that Mars is not in a great position right now to view, we also have the severe disadvantage of the telescope that's being used currently. It's definitely not made for planets. It's more for wide field viewing. So let's go here. We'll take a peek at Mars. Now, some of you may be wondering why I have this light on at the observatory. So it is an infrared light from the camera that's there. Typically, whenever doing any astrophotography, or if you are, if I'm doing any live streaming with dim objects, I will turn it off. But since we're looking at very bright objects, it's not really going to interfere with anything. So let's see if we can find Mars so everyone can get excited and then be severely disappointed. Yeah, it's hard to do like just natively with a cell phone, any astrophotography. If you put your phone on a star tracker, what a star tracker is it's just a device that's going to counteract the Earth's rotation. You can get some wide field Milky Way photos in summer in the Northern Hemisphere that are fairly impressive. The biggest disadvantage is going to be sensor size. The sensor size on a phone is very small compared to what would be on even a point and shoot camera. Back out a little bit further here. I'm going to turn this up so we don't have any 20-second exposures. I'm surprised we don't see anything though, which is bizarre. Give you an idea of what Mars would look like. It would look through this telescope a small dot. It is possible that we may be out of focus enough. That it's not picking it up, but it should be picking it up. Because I know I've looked at it before and I'm like, okay, it's a small dot, which was to be expected. With this scope here and setup, you can just start to barely make out the cloud banding on Jupiter with the camera. Through the eyepiece you can make it out, but it's still typically too small of a scope to try to do any major planetary imaging. All right, so 2322, that's correct. It says we're there. I don't believe it though. We shouldn't be. We're definitely clearing the roof. Or are we? No, we are not. Are we? Let's see here. Let's take a peek. We are not. Okay. The field of view on, I was watching monitoring the stream here and it was severely delayed. I see we are in the roof actually, which is not correct. We should be pointed almost directly up towards zenith. However, for some reason, this is showing Mars exactly due west. Meanwhile, it should be Actually, Mars should be south right up here. So I'm not sure why this is thinking this is here. Now I'm curious if we go back to the moon, if it's actually going to go back to the moon. Yes, Stellarium doesn't like me. I used to use Cartes du Sol with my old setup as a planetarium software, and I had never had problems with it. It's not visually impressive at all. It's very rudimentary. But even with that said, I still feel like I might go back to it because it was a solid performer. It was a star chart with ASCOM integration, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Whereas Stellarium, it's good in its own ways, but being that it doesn't run that well on this computer, as well as... Okay, so we are back at the moon. That is so bizarre. Let's try... Let me try something else here. I'm curious. Let's see if we can try M81, M82. Even though the moon's up, we should be able to get a capture of it just to see. If not, we'll go to a bright star. Even though this stream was supposed to just be some fun things about the moon, it's still fun to jump around. Ron S., if you do have an SLR camera and a wide-angle lens, 50 millimeters or less, 35-18 preferably, even if you don't have a star tracker, you can get some great photos of the Milky Way. It does take a little bit of creativity with stacking. And here we go. There's M82 right there. I can start to see it coming up. What we're going to do is just to help combat any problems with the infrared, we're going to go ahead and shut that off right now for now. And we're going to bump this up. It's going to be real grainy, but once again, we're trying to image something that not a convenient time with the moon being up. And I can see with these stars, you can see how oblong they are. We are out of focus. We'll wait for the next frame to come through in 5 seconds. We'll see if this comes in, but yep, there we go. So that's M81 and M82. That's going to be 2 galaxies. Not terrible for just a single 13-second frame with a nearly full moon. You can actually almost see some color coming through on the Cigar Galaxy there. So M81 on the left here, it's a spiral galaxy. It's about 12 million light years away. Right now, you're only seeing the core of it. Let me... I'd nudge it over to get it in field of view a little bit better, but now that we went from 1 millisecond exposures, we're up to 13.2 right now. So this does have spirals like the Milky Way galaxy that are coming out. However, those are much more dimmer than the core. So all we're getting is just a little bit of a halo here as well as the core. Pump this up 20 seconds. And then its companion, M82, is about 11.42 million light years away. Just let me scroll over, we'll get a little, there we go. So M82, it's more of a edge-on almost. So edge-on galaxy is going to be from Earth's position. You're looking at like the flat plane of it, Whereas a face-on galaxy, you're looking at it like you're looking top down or bottom up. So you get to see all the spirals and features. M82, so being like that, it does go elongated this way, and it does have emissions that come out this way as well. You definitely wouldn't be able to pick that up. You can almost start to see some of the brighter banding here. Give it another 10 seconds and change this to 350. It's going to start getting very grainy though. The higher the gain, it's like the equivalent to adjusting the ISO on a digital camera. It introduces more noise. So that next frame will come in about 9 seconds. On my first live stream, I just hopped over to these two, and I was amazed at what a single frame showed. So, no, I think that might just be some reflections. I'm not really seeing any of the banding now that I'm looking at it a little bit brighter, but that is the core. You can definitely see the core of this galaxy a little bit better too. What I'm going to do now, I want to get this focus. I'm going to drop this down to something more reasonable and try to get one of these brighter stars in focus. So to do that, we're going to crank this way up. We're going to bump this down even lower. And I had a feeling I was going to say it's going to get too grainy, but let's... see if we can get this. I think we're going the wrong way though. Appears that they're getting fatter. Yep. So we'll go out 3 clicks, 60 steps, and see if this makes the stars a little bit smaller. Now SharpCap does have a focusing tool. I actually haven't purchased SharpCap yet. I'm still using the freeware version. So I'm not sure if the focusing assistant is part of the free version or not. Okay, you can see we are quite a ways out of focus, which we have dropped 3 degrees Celsius since we started this live stream too. So with the gain up that high, you can see how much noise there is, but being that these are so bright, you can still see both of them fairly well. I think we passed our mark, and I think we're going back out of focus now. Yep. So we're going to go back in 3. So that was just 1 step out from where we were. So we're in that in-between period. In the Northern Hemisphere, wintertime is more of your nebula season, and summertime is more of your galaxy season. There's a lot more galaxies in view in the Northern Hemisphere in the summer. So I have to make a decision here within the next probably 2 months if I want to set up my other telescope. The focal length, the equivalent focal length right now of this scope with the reducer is 528 millimeters, whereas I have a f4,000 millimeter Newtonian reflector. The problem with it is the focuser is not very good. And okay, that's what I was gonna say. Why aren't we finding anything? We're at 20 milliseconds, not 20 seconds. As well as I get a lot of coma at the edge of the field of view. Now that can be fixed by cropping to an extent in post-processing, but I really do need to get a coma corrector if I want to keep using it. So let's see if these look a little bit better now that we have got back into focus. little bit better. You can see a little bit more of the dark lanes here, some of the dust. It's a little bit more pronounced. This pair was one of the first galaxy photos that I ever intentionally took. I say intentionally because the first photos I ever took, astrophotography, as far as deep sky astrophotography, were the Ring Nebula and the Dumbbell Nebula. And when I was processing the Ring Nebula, I kept finding these little smudges. And once I looked up what those smudges were, I found out that they were galaxies. I forget the distance, but they were very far away. The first, you can actually watch a video of my first ever deep sky photo of a galaxy. First unsuccessful as well. It's on my channel available of M31, and I was very proud of it. I remember after attending my local star party, setting everything up and capturing all this great data, sitting down at a Denny's restaurant at like 1 in the morning with my laptop, trying to eat my food as quickly as I could while Deep Sky Stacker continued to fail stacking the images because I was using a fork mount Nexstar 4 SE and didn't understand that that was definitely not the telescope to use for astrophotography, even though Celestron sold the adapter so you could hook up a camera to it. But you should definitely check out a video out. It's fun. I showed the progression of that very first photo to the second time I attempted that galaxy with my Newtonian reflector, and then finally with the setup that you're viewing right now. So it's fun. Andromeda, speaking of, should have just cleared the walls, so that might be something fun to end this stream on. Once again, it's going to look similar to this, with just a single frame, especially with the moon being up, as well as it being kind of low on the horizon. It's about 30 degrees right now. But it's something fun. These two never fail to impress me, though, just with single frames, with how well they look. So the Andromeda Galaxy M31, it is our closest galactic neighbor, unless you want to consider the two Magellanic Clouds. The Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way are slowly headed towards a collision course many, many years from now. And all the models show that even with two galaxies crossing paths and destroying each other and forming one super galaxy, that the chances of two stars actually hitting each other are slim to none. And if you just think about that for a little bit, of how many stars are in a galaxy and two of them colliding head on with each other and getting torn apart, that there will be no direct collisions. Now that's obviously just computer modeling, but still, with the data showing that, that's kind of gives you an idea how big things are in space. And I don't think the telescope slewed, actually. Oh, there is something in that frame, since it hasn't slewed. That could possibly be a satellite. I'm not seeing any blips, any blinks, so that's probably a satellite right there. Typically, even high altitude planes, you'll still see little flashes going along. That's going to be a satellite. Let's see what Stellarium's trying to do here. See if it's... Tell it to slew one more time. Maybe it's just not liking the keyboard commands for slewing. Because even still, I'm looking here, I can see the shadows. It is not... So fighting here with the mount, it's actually not... it's not wanting to move at all off of MND1 and ME2. Maybe it's just as fascinated by it as I am. We're going to bump this back down just to see if we can get some movement out of it. And I also realized I believe that once I switch to the full screen of the observatory that it cuts the audio for the live stream. That's something I'm going to have to add in. Let's see here. Let me see. So what I was saying is what I might do next time is... Okay, so I still have control of the mount. The Losmandy G11 mount that I'm using is connected to my network. So next time I may try running Stellarium locally on my PC at home to take some strain off of the capturing computer and see if Stellarium will play nicer on it. Otherwise, I think I'm going to go back to Karts's Soul because it's, like I said before, it has been a solid performer. Let me see if I can get it to slew here. Okay, so it's going to slew to Arcturus, even though that's not what we're looking for. Then it's going to have to do a Meridian Flip. I was also starting to think that possibly Stellarium isn't liking running in a windowed mode and using the keyboard commands over remote desktop. So there's Arcturus coming into view. Nothing super exciting. It's a star. Take this opportunity to see if we can get a little bit better focus on it. Arcturus is just over 35 light years away. It's going to be the bright one here. So being 37 light years away, it's one of the closer stars to Earth. I'll put this down. Let's see if we can get this in focus. And we're going to try M31 one more time just to end the stream on another galaxy. Okay, let's go back in. So if you notice these little lines coming off the star, so with a reflector that has the spider vane in the front, little cross, how you get those diffraction spikes. Why you're getting them here on a reflector? Well, the camera I'm using with the coatings on the front glass, it's a design flaw of the camera that causes these micro reflections. Whenever I used this camera on my refractor, never really noticed it because the diffraction spikes would cover that almost in its entirety. When I started using this refractor, it became very apparent, and I actually went as far as almost sending the telescope back to California where it was built until I did some research and found out it's actually the camera and there's nothing that can be done. Thankfully, it only ever affects bright stars, and it's fairly easy to remove in post-processing whenever you're doing astrophotography. The more concerning thing is I have two motes of dust that travel to the backside of the front element that I cannot get rid of. Being that the rest of the optics are still in good condition and clean, I'm not going to send it back to get it tore down and reworked and cleaned. The other good thing is with your calibration frames, your flat frames, it's easy to remove most dust mites. Or dust motes, dust mites, dust specks, whatever you choose to call them. All right. So try one last time. If not, we'll go back to the moon. See if there's anything we can find the transformers hiding. So it's almost acting, which is really bizarre. Because where's west? Let's see here. I need, where's... northwest. Oh, you know what? I'm curious. I bet that's the problem. I was using the Stellarium software that I was using on my other device here. Didn't have the correct time. That could also be why Mars was in a different position than I had thought. So Mars being here, it's about 30 degrees above the horizon. That is right where my roof is. So maybe it was just more of user error than anything, which is typical with me. So we will try M101, which is definitely high in the sky, especially this time of the year. It mainly stays up there throughout the entire night. This is going to be another spiral galaxy. It's going to be fairly difficult to see, once again, with the full moon, and even harder with a single frame. But this is why Stellarium is nice, because you can zoom in and it'll give you a photo of what it's supposed to look like. There's a couple different fun planetarium programs out there. Deep, if you want something that is very graphically impressive, a open source software called, I believe it's Deep Space Program. It's a great learning tool. Not a charting program, more of a learning device than anything. Let's see if we can at least pull out a couple faint hints of the spiral arms. So if anything does come through here, we'll be looking at M101, also known as the Pinwheel Galaxy. M101 is about 25 million light years away, so a little bit further than the last two. But it's also a little bit dimmer. And we're still on 10 milliseconds. We want 10 seconds. There we go. First frame should be coming through shortly here. All right, so we can just barely even see the core here on this one. We'll bump it up to 20 seconds. I believe I tried to do a couple single frames and it was quite difficult. I think 30 seconds starts to get it in view. M100 might be a little bit easier to see actually. I do know that we have imaged that recently. Haven't uploaded it yet, but I did try to photograph the Ceres asteroid transiting M100, and it's a lot brighter, so you can barely see the core right here. And I'm not sure if it's coming through. It's just a faint, and it could just be the way the graininess shows. Remote desktop doesn't help either. Sometimes your eyes plays tricks on you as far as when you're looking for a detail. But this one should come, M100 should come through on a single frame. At least I can see down here in the bottom right. ASCOM let me know that Gemini is moving, which is better than last time when it didn't bring that pop up. Alrighty, so it has completed its slew. So the next frame that comes through, it's still going to be moving. So the frame after that, in about another 25 seconds, should be M101, or excuse me, M100. Now M100 is 55 million light years away from Earth. And the next frame should be coming through. But being with the moon, it's going to be washed out as well. So we may have to end it on that, unless anybody wants to go back to the moon for a little bit. Hop by over there, see if we can find any transformers for Ron here. Maybe you should try pointing your phone at the moon and seeing if you can find some transformers. Let's see, we'll go back to the moon just for a second here. We can end it the way we started. I don't know why I just went to find moon. It's easy enough to just scroll out. Guess it's just habit bouncing around to different areas. Okay, let's see here. Definitely going to change this to 0.1 milliseconds. There we go. So you may notice the moon has now flipped. That's because it has crossed the meridian, and the telescope is now pointing at it from the opposite side of the mount, or actually the pier. So now everything has flipped on its side. And you can see we're also very out of focus for the moon. So let's get this. See how out of focus we are. A couple fine clicks, and then we'll go back to the course and cheat. All right, so it definitely needs to go in because I definitely seen it get nice and clear. Okay. Give it another one. Let's see here. Still not seeing any transformers. But it is the moon, and it was a great start to the live stream. And gotta say, definitely looks like it was a great end to the live stream as well. Please consider subscribing to my channel. You know what? What is that there that's coming through? I think I found your transformer. Peeking around the side there. So now we know. There could be transformers on the moon there. But once again, thank you for stopping by to the Astro in Focus YouTube channel. My name is Brian. Greatly appreciate you tuning in today. Hopefully you learned a couple things. Thanks for helping me figure out some of the quirks of my system. It's a learning experience. I knew Ron S would be excited there. But definitely please consider subscribing. It definitely helps this channel grow and encourages me to keep putting on these live streams and hopefully over time improve a little bit. Once summer comes along, hopefully there'll be some more clear nights. We'll be able to do these more often, as well as checking out the moon. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on it, especially whenever it's not so fully illuminated. It would be great to do a couple back-to-back live streams each evening and almost keep a log of that termination line. But please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Until next time, clear skies.